Hello, this is Falterfire, and today I wanted to go over the changes, as many of them as I can, in the latest patch, which is 4633, I believe is what the patch notes say. We're a couple hotfixes later, but it's still largely the same patch. And this is the first patch in a few months. The last patch added depth. The last patches we had were hotfixes following the edition of Depth 3 back in August. This is the first patch we've had that's really added new content, made significant balance changes, and there are quite a few changes. So I figured it would make sense to go through and explain some of them for people who are curious. So first up, I want to talk about a few of the changes in town. We have in the Forge, there's a new item, the Astral Spyglass. And so the Astral Spyglass, I'll show you how that works in a moment. It lets you see the enemy composition of upcoming fights and their card rewards. So I will show you what that means. But the important thing is it has two ranks. The first rank, you just see what is in the fights. The second rank, you see what cards they can drop. The card reward information is information that you technically could know on your own, but especially if you are newer to the game, being able to see that at a glance is very nice. Regenerative Harness now goes to 4 ranks, with the last rank meaning that you can now restore up to 4 health at the end of every fight, which is a substantial amount of health total over the course of a run. It's basically like an extra rest and then some, depending on how many fights you do and which character you're playing, obviously. The other two changes, Aether Booster and Reinforced Outfits, now both go to 10 ranks instead of 5, but the total bonus is the same. The difference is each, instead of being only 5 ranks that scale up very quickly, there are 10 ranks, and each rank is cheaper than before. The total cost to get to rank 10 is very, very similar. I think it's slightly cheaper on the outfits and like 500 coins more expensive on Aether Boosters. But the net result is that it is easier to make small investments over time into them instead of feeling like you have to save up a whole bunch of coins in order to get any value here. So that is these two, same in bonus, roughly the same cost, just more total upgrades. So you can do a more gradual growth there. There are a couple new quests. There's one for like dealing damage with allies. There's one for I think the one for dealing damage with curse is new to this, but that may have been the last patch. No big changes though, just some slight tweaks and a couple very minor new quests. The market didn't change at all. On the start run screen, the mechanic I want to show off here is Cardbacks. So you start with only this one unlocked, which is the default cardback. This one is unlocked for free on Steam because Steam is a one-time upfront purchase. If you're on mobile, then buying the starter pack, the beginner pack, whatever the name of the initial pack in the store is, that gives you that disables ads and whatever, that also gives you this card back. And then you have card backs for beating Area 1 the first time, Area 2, Area 3 boss. So functionally it is Depth 1, Depth 2, Depth 3 first wins. We'll get you those. If you have already played a full Depth 3 win before this patch came out, just playing through on Depth 3 again will get you all 3 of them. But for newer players, it will always be your first Depth 1 win will get you this, your first Depth 2 win, your first Depth 3 win. The others cost, and I can't show you the costs because I've already bought all of them. You can choose whether to spend gold or Aether on them. And either way, they're just cosmetic, so you may not want to bother spending cash. You may not want to bother spending resources. These are basically just a resource sink once you have bought everything else that you can, because you'll notice I have some extra currency that I otherwise have no way to spend, and this is after I bought all the card backs. So I may have played this game too much. Nah. Anyway, so I'm going to just real quick show off I'm not going to actually play. I just want to show the Astral Spyglass and then use this to talk about one of the new mechanics, which is fatigue. But so you can see here we have a couple changes to the map. One of them, you can see that we have this. We have the gold frame instead of just the same colors. So we've got gold for bosses. We've got silver for elites. The regular nodes and the events are the same colors. You can also see we now have a legend so that you don't have to guess at what the things mean. The legend will tell you exactly what each thing means. Another point is that there are a couple new events. There's, I think, 2 in Area 1 and 1 in Area 2. And I don't want to get into the details of the events, both because it's tricky to explain and I don't know exactly what all of them do, all the outcomes are, but also because, you know, it's something for you to discover for yourself. So the Astral Spyglass. If you have rank 1, you'll only see this part on the left side, which is which enemies are in the fight. So you'll see I can click and I can see that, for example, if I'm choosing between these two and I really want a lacerating strike, I probably want to go with this fight because this fight has a Dweel in it. And so does that one. So I can go into 2 Thornberries times twice, or I can go into Thornberry plus Dweel into Thornberry plus Dweel. And I can also mouse over these cards if I don't know what they are to see the full text. And if I hover over them long enough, I also get the tooltips. So if you pick this up, it will hopefully show you all of these fancy things. And then this is showing you that there are additional rewards here that you can potentially get because it's an elite fight. And then for the events, it just says an ether, however that's pronounced, oddity with nothing else. And we have new art on some cards. So I'm going to go ahead and start a fight just to show you the new UI. So we still have the ability to click on your deck, click on your draw pile. You can also see we now have a hand size counter. We have a fatigue counter. If you mouse over this in fairly small letters, it will explain to you how fatigue works. So the short version is fatigue is a nonsense limiter. You'll notice I draw a card. The fatigue goes up to 1 out of 6. I draw another card. The fatigue goes up to 2 out of 6. I'm not going to be able to get to 6 out of 6, but if you get to 6, you get a stack of fatigue, and whenever you draw a card, the cards, if it is not a mana card, its cost is increased by 1 this turn for each stack of fatigue. So you have fatigue 2, and you draw a card that normally costs 3 mana. 3 plus 2 is 5. It now costs 5 mana. If you regrowth that card while you still have 2 fatigue stacks, it will cost 2 more. And that card that used to cost 3 mana now costs 7 mana. So fatigue gives one day a way to reduce the impact of, reduce the ability to sort of do nonsense, as it were. I'm not actually going to finish this run. I just wanted to show you the UI. All right, so there are a couple other changes to combat. Enemies in depth 2 now have more health overall. Some enemies will now do an AoE attack, which is tied to summoning, which we'll talk about in a moment. And the area 3 bosses got changed very slightly. The biggest change, I think, is that Emerald Dragon is now even more of a beating than it was before. Because when it hits 40% health, so it has more health overall, and when it hits 40% health, in addition to getting powerful and putting shock spasms in your deck, it also gets 2 stacks of plated. So if you are a deck that does a lot of small increments of damage, that doesn't have Dispel Magic or Arcane Strike, you will have a real rough time against Emerald Dragon, especially if you don't have much card draw to get you through the shock spasms. So that's it for mechanic changes. Changes in town, changes to overall mechanics for the most part. I do want to talk about, there are actually 2 more things I want to talk about that are sort of mechanic related. The first is evasion. So prior to this patch, if you had evasion stacks and you were, let's say you were hidden, So you have a 50% chance to evade, and you have evasion 1. If you get attacked, you would lose that evasion stack to evade the attack always. That's no longer true. Now, if I have a 50% chance to evade and 1 evasion stack, it will first check to see if I naturally evade, and then only if I fail the hidden evade roll does it consume the evade stack. This makes evasion much, much, much better on Mirley, and it means that Mirley can get even more value out of extending, out of padding out her evasion using evasion stacks, because hidden plus evasion and then evade chance from items will combine to let her get even more safety than before. Because previously on Mirley, as your evade chance went up, the usefulness of evasion went down, because if you have, an 80% chance of evading and you have an evasion stack, there was an 80% chance that you wasted it, because there was an 80% chance that even if you hadn't had that stack, you still would have evaded. The other change is that we got a new mechanic called summoning, and I want to show that real quick. And once again, I'm not planning to do a full run here. I'm planning to just get in and show off this one specific mechanic. So there are a few cards now, 3 cards total, I think, that can summon allies, and this is one of them. So this is Thriving Spirit. So you can see I played Thriving Spirit, which says summon 1 Angry Spirit, and you can see it shows a card, Angry Spirit spell, deal 3x2 damage to the first enemy. And it says give the first ally powerful 1 and tough 2. So when it says summon 1 Angry Spirit, what this Angry Spirit card it shows is the thing that this spirit does every turn. Every single turn, on its turn, this spirit will do initially 3x2 damage, but because it's got powerful 1, it does actually 4x2. And so when I end my turn, things take their turns in order, which means that first this guy does 4 damage twice, then this does 3 damage twice, then that does 3 damage twice. So if the spirit is able to kill the enemy before it, because the spirit will go first, because enemy monsters go left to right, it's possible for the spirit to get the kill and prevent the monster from taking a turn. And I may just play out the rest of this fight to possibly show that. So you can see we go bonk, 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 bonk. Okay, yeah, this is a pretty good example. But so you can see, first of all, you're going to notice this reflect will still apply to these guys. They can die, although there aren't many things that can hit them. But you'll notice this one didn't get a turn because it had been murdered by spirits. Angry spirits, in fact. So there are a few new cards that can do this summon mechanic. They are all in the generic card pool, so you'll have to unlock them. We will probably get a summoner hero at some point, but we don't have one yet. So that is summoning in a nutshell. So that is all of the mechanics I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about the character changes. So character changes, starting with Mirley. So I've seen some people saying that they think Mirley was nerfed on this patch, and I believe that is very, very wrong. Mirley, I believe prior to this patch, on the last patch with Depth 3, Mirley was by far the weakest character. You could roll specifically evade items to go with her, but if you didn't, you tended to be in a pretty rough spot. Hidden was difficult to rely on, and she was bad at... It was very expensive in terms of how many cards you had to spend on it to stay in Hidden to do damage. And so basically, a lot of times, you were just... This first passive mattered if you were going really aggressive, and then the others could be very awkward because they all relied on you evading, and that it was just kind of a mess a lot of the time to get that all to work together properly. And so let's talk about what changed for Mirley. So actually, before I go to the cards, you can see we have Mirley's level 10 passive now can also give you ranks of purity. which is very important because purity is one of the most valuable debuffs, or one of the most valuable buffs on depth 3. And so having this chance to just get bonus free purity stacks can be very valuable, especially against enemies like the Hollow Maw, which does multi-attacks and and then debuffs. Because what will happen is you will evade 3 or 4 attacks, one of them will give you purity, and then that purity will immediately be used to block whatever the Maw was going to do to you, which usually would be like a curse, which is incredibly helpful. So let's talk about the changes to Mirley's cards. Let's actually go over to this. So the big one, and the reason a lot of people were saying this was a nerf, is that smoke bombs now cost 1, and they now cost 1 to play, and preparations now costs 2 to play. And so they look at this and they say, well, getting into hidden now costs a lot more mana. Isn't that a big downside? And I would say no, and here's why. Drawing a card is very, very important. Prior to this patch, you would end up with these awkward Mirley hands where you've got, let's say you drew both preparations in your opening hand. You're running, say, 2 preparations and 1 covert strike in your deck, okay? So turn 1, your hand is mana card, preparations, shield card, or utility card, or worse, covert strike. And so now you've got a bunch of ways to enter hidden, and then you pass to your next turn and you've got 3 damaging cards and no ways to enter hidden, and you can play one of them, and then if you play a second one, you leave hidden and you're just sad, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now what happens is you play preparations, you get 2 smoke bombs. You play 1 smoke bomb, you draw a card. Now you have an additional card to work with. And then if you can deal enough damage to leave hidden, you can play the second smoke bomb and get another card to work with. This means that preparations hand that has 2 preparations, now you can immediately cash those in to find more cards. Worst case scenario, yes, it does mean that your Mirley deck probably will be more mana hungry than before, but the combination of having 2 smoke bombs instead of just 1, and the fact that the smoke bombs draw cards, means that a Mirley deck is now much more consistent at doing what it needs to do every turn, and more consistently in more fights. You're much less likely to end up in that with awkward hands that you just can't do anything with. The other benefit of this is because you're now getting 2 smoke bombs from preparations, bold move becomes a lot better. Because bold move, which is lose hidden if you do gain powerful 1, if you previously in a starting deck had this awkward problem where to play it, you needed a way to get back into hidden afterwards. And often you were choosing between playing a damaging card with that critical bonus or playing bold move. You don't have to make that choice anymore, or at least you don't have to make it as often. You play preparations, you play a damaging card, you play bold move, you play the other smoke bomb. If you started hidden, you can go damaging card, bold move, smoke bomb, damaging card, smoke bomb. And that is, with preparations, you got to actually, there you go, bold move, smoke bomb, damaging card, smoke bomb. And then you have played bold move and 2 damaging cards, and you've hidden, and you've only needed 1 copy of preparations to do that, which is very good. And being able to do sequences like that is a huge boost to Mirley's power level. Also, bide time got better. Bide time used to cost 3, now it costs 2. And 2 mana draw 2 is very good. Between this and preparations, if you like 2 preparations, 1 bide time, you can move through your Mirley deck very quickly, which makes like increasing stab very good on Mirley. Because it's just that much easier to loop through and find it. I have built a deck around increasing stab with Mirley, which I believe I've shown on stream at least, or not stream. I believe I've recorded at least 1 video with that. If not, I will probably record one soon. But so that's very good. And bide time plus is just even more ridiculous. If you're hidden draw 3, that seems good. 1 mana draw 3 is with literally the only downside is you have to be hidden, and you're on Mirley, so like you want to be hidden anyway. And upsides, if you have like a tiny book or a lucky die, if you end up with a really bad opening hand, there are times where you can use a trinket to discard bide time and save yourself, which is amazing. So other cards that changed. Vanish didn't change directly, but again, Smoke Bomb's drawing cards. Big upside. This is now a way to get some shield and hidden and a bit of draw. Hidden Storm and Fatal Strike didn't change. Blade Dance didn't change, but because of the Evasion Changes, it's now better. Noxious Blend now outright creates a Smoke Bomb. I believe that is a change on this patch, which means that, or now it outright creates a Noxious Bomb. So instead of having to have a Smoke Bomb left over, you can just take it and play it and not worry that you'll draw it at the wrong time. I've got to pause for just a moment. All right. So yeah, Noxious Blend, it's fine. It's still not my favorite of the Mirley cards, but it did still get a buff. But moving on to other cards that are now very good. Actually, first, these two cards didn't change at all. This one is still worse when you hit level 10 because you just can get critical and lethal from your level 10 passive. But before that, it's very good because critical and lethal together is a very nice buff. And, you know, just a solid bit of value that doesn't cost you any mana if you're hidden, which you will be. One with Shadows is still very good. So the other two cards so Resourcefulness didn't change, but it creates Smoke Bombs. And so functionally what this reads is gain 2 mana, draw 1. You may recognize that as Mana Font. Mana Font being an incredibly powerful card that drops from Vessel of Knowledge, the Arcane Robot Area 1 mid-boss. Mirley just gets to put Mana Font in her card pool, and it's better than Mana Font because it gives hidden when you draw the card, which is, you know, obviously a big step up from just drawing. And it's a skill when you play it, which means that you can use it with like Resolute Focus, or I was going to say Deft Focus, but obviously you can't use it with Deft Focus. But you can use it with Resolute Focus. When it upgrades into Mana Font Plus, so it upgrades into gain 2 mana, draw 2. Or, again, you can just spend that extra mana if you want to. You don't have to turn that mana into more cards, which is fantastic flexibility. And with Fatigue, only drawn cards are affected. Smoke Bombs you create will always cost 1. Although, like, if you had left a Smoke Bomb in your deck from a previous turn, and you draw a Smoke Bomb from your deck that you had prepared earlier, that will be affected by Fatigue. But Resourcefulness was already very solid, and now it is amazing. So that is, on its own, a very big buff to Mirley, on top of all the other ones we talked about. And then Assassinate, it now costs 1 more mana, but it also now does a lot more damage. Previously, it was kind of this, it was in this awkward place where it was kind of just backstab, but sometimes worse and sometimes a bit better, but mostly it was backstab. Now that it does 12 damage base, it starts at 36 for 3 mana instead of previously it started at like 18 for 2. So it now only costs 1 more mana, but it does twice as much damage, which is pretty good. And so this is now a lot more appealing of a card. And when you upgrade it and it goes to 18 damage, so now it is 36 plus 18 is, I signed that on back, 54. So now it is 3 mana for 54 damage on upgrade, which is a lot. And that's before you factor in. The other important thing is, because this is bonus critical damage, it is still better than backstab in the places it was before, which is that it gets functionally plus 3 damage per stack of powerful, because assuming that you're doing a critical hit, because you get, you know, you go from 12 to 13 on your base hit, and your critical goes from plus 26, from being plus 24 to being plus 26. So that's a total of plus 3, which is very nice, because you go total from 36 to 39 damage with just 1 stack of powerful. And so each stack of powerful is worth triple on it. And Mighty is worth extra because the Mighty bonus applies before critical. And if the enemy is shocked, that also will apply first. So if you hit a shocked enemy with an Assassinate, that does 36 times 3 damage, which is 108 damage, which is very good. So yeah, Assassinate is now very much a card worth taking. It does only hit once, which is relevant against certain enemies. Like if you go into Area 2 with only backstabs and Assassinates, Drakes are going to laugh at you and you will be sad. But it makes the heavy hit, the Mirley single hit plan that much stronger to have this as an option, as an upgrade to backstab instead of just relying on backstab for cheap single hits. So yeah, that is the Mirley changes. I understand that it takes some getting used to the smoke bombs being more expensive and the preparations being more expensive, but I assure you, once you have adjusted to include a bit more mana to account for that, the decks, she's just incredible. The stuff that you can pull off with Mirley decks now are ridiculous and amazing, and you'll win a lot. Mirley's great. Silan. So Silan nobly sacrificed several cards to become generic. And I'll go over those in a moment. So there's a couple changes to Silan. Nothing to his passives. No matter how much I don't love the level 10, it is still the same. But Silan got a few new cards. First of all, there are two cards of Silan's that got moved to generic. Rummage, which is a great pickup for discard decks for other characters. Rummage was previously a Silan card, but it didn't really feel like a Silan card because you're looking at it. Nothing it does anything with cannon blasts. And then the other card that Silan gave up was Endure, which got changed. Used to Endure was just like this weird, basically just sort of miniature stone skin. It's like this weird cross between Stone Skin and Soul Shield, where it was like gain tough 2 and wits 1, I think, for 1 mana. But now Endure is basically a tough version of Gather Power. So Gather Power, if you're not familiar with it, is lose mighty, gain powerful, and Endure is lose tough, gain plated. And when upgraded, you still lose 2 and gain 1 plated. It was way too good when originally it was you lose 1 tough and you get plated 1, and that was too good. And if this let you get plated 2, it would also be way too good. So it just gets cheaper and you heal more. The upgrade's not that valuable, but if the upgrade changed the numbers you wanted it to, the card becomes utterly busted. It's already very good in the deck that can use it. Anyway, but it's now a generic card. You can run this card on anybody, not just Silan. But I wanted to cover it because it used to be a Silan card, and I'm talking about Silan. So Silan's actual cards. So the big change is all of the cannon mods changed. Previously, all they said was transform a cannon blast into a thing. And this meant that if you had, let's say that you drew a mystical mod and a scattered mod. So let's say you drew a scattered mod and a mystical mod, so you have both of them in your hand, and then you do not have a reload, so you have 1 cannon blast. Well, now you have a dead card. One of the 2 cards is going to do nothing for you. But because of this change, if you have both, you can play both and you'll get something. You don't want to pay 4 mana to just draw 1 card and do nothing else, but sometimes you will because you have a bunch of mana and it's better than doing literally nothing. Likewise, like Scattered Mod is now gains Mighty 2. Defensive Mod now gains Tough 2. And Automatic Mod now gives you Powerful 2 this turn. I'm going to check real quick. I don't remember if Defensive Energy had its effect changed. Right, okay, that's it. Defensive Energy used to give Tough, but now because Defensive Mod gives Tough, Defensive Energy gives Sturdy instead. The other mods, the other special blasts are unchanged. Or Mystical Blast now draws 1 more card. You used to draw 2, now it draws 3. When upgraded, it draws 4. Cannon Blast is the same, or Scattered Blast is the same, which is crazy because it's very, very good. And now Scattered Mod also gives Mighty, making this even better. Other cards that changed. So the 2 replacement cards. Let's finish talking about changes, and I'll talk about the new cards. Hexed Bolts used to be Poisoned Bolts, which was very weird on Silan. It was you dealt some damage to the first two enemies, and then you gave them poison and frail. And why is Silan doing poison and frail? Now you give the first two enemies Arcane Weakness 1, which means this now works with what Silan is doing. And when upgraded, you give them Arcane Weakness 2 for 3 mana, which is a very good deal. That is by far the best way in the game right now to apply Arcane Weakness. And it is, so it's cheap, it's easy to get a hold of, it does okay damage on its own. Not amazing damage, you're not excited to get 6 or 8 damage, but the fact that it comes with Arcane Weakness to potentially multiple enemies, which will work with all of Silan's passives that care about arcane detonations, it's very good. So this is a great change. This makes this card a lot more appealing. The other card that changed, I lied. That is the last of the changes. This card, despite still being busted, has not changed. So the two new Silan cards, if you're familiar with Silan, you've been paying attention, you've probably already spotted them. But Lock and Load is the replacement for Endure. It's the new silver card. And so it is draw 2 and create 1 Cannon Blast. So this gives you another reload type option for creating more Cannon Blasts, so that you don't just have to keep taking reloads. If you want more of that effect, you can get an extra bonus instead of just the Cannon Blast, which is a nice thing. And when upgraded, you draw 3 and you create 2 Cannon Blasts. It does cost 5 when you do that, but if you just want to do an entire salvo of Cannon Blasts, Lock and Load Plus is the card for you. The other card is Armor Up, which is a sturdy payoff, which gives you shield equal to a percentage of your maximum shield. So to start with, this isn't that strong, but the idea is if you get enough sturdy, it eventually hits a point where it is worth quite a lot of shield. I don't actually like it that much. I think that in practice right now the numbers are a bit low, but if you like building decks if you wanted to build a deck around having a lot of sturdy, this card now exists as a payoff in a similar way to how a Mana Barrier works for growth decks. So that is the Silan changes. So the last character, so we just talked about some wonderful buffs, and now it's time to talk about some nerfs. My boy, Caitan, flew too close to the sun. He was too good, and he had to be punished for it. He's still very good. He can still absolutely blitz through an entire run, murder everything on turn 1, and laugh. But he is now weaker than he was before. He's now a bit harder to do that. So the changes to Caitan, first of all, actually, before we get into that, he now only has 6 max shield, and he now only gets 1 mana per turn default instead of 2, which are obviously pretty big changes. He used to have 10 max shield, so this is like basically you're taking 4 extra damage every fight that you actually have to pass the turn, which can add up and be annoying. And you are getting 1 less mana every turn to work with, which if you're winning on turn 1, that's neither of those is a huge deal, but it is worth knowing about. It is actually a nerf, and it does punish Caitan. If Caitan can't go off, it is more of a punish to that. You are now much less able to just tank hits on turn 1 using your max shield and then just win on turn 2 without having taken any hits. The other change is his level 10 passive. When he creates a temporary copy of a striker spell, the temporary copy costs 2 more, which makes it a little weaker, a little less easy to just multiple times play whatever your strongest card is. And if the thing is already increased by fatigue, it will be 2 more than whatever it was after fatigue had increased the cost. So the other Caitan changes. So Vindictive Strike has so far escaped unscathed, which is good. Vindictive Strike is still busted. It will still just absolutely win the run for you. No questions asked. It slaughters everything. It's hilarious. It's amazing. You want it. Bouncing Bolt is still not recovered from its nerf. It's still bad. So Magic Blade used to be 3x2. Now it only hits once for 5, which makes it a lot worse at dealing with like Drake evasion. It makes it worse with runes. It makes it worse at basically everything. The only place that it's better is it is slightly better against plated enemies. Hooray! But mostly this is just a nerf. And that, as a nerf, means that the Spell Slash is now a bit weaker, which is unsurprising. Spell Slash was incredibly good. It probably deserved the nerf, but it still hurts. The other big nerf is Quick Blast. It now does more damage. It now does 6 instead of 4, but you only get the mana if you're in spell stance. And that hurts a lot. That means that Quick Blasts are no longer completely free. Previously, like, you could play Overflow, and then you could always just jam out those Quick Blasts regardless of anything else that was going on, and just no worries, throw out the Quick Blasts, you'd be golden. That is no longer the case. You do have to be able to get into spell stance to take advantage of that, which can make turns that like involve Spell Slash and Overflow a little more awkward to sequence out sometimes. But overall, like I said, Caitan's still very good. Caitan can still burn through everything on turn 1 once you get the deck rolling. Caitan is definitely not weak. I just wanted to mention Caitan's been nerfed and is no longer quite as strong as he was before. So that is it for character changes. I want to go over some of the larger categories of changes to the cards real quick. I'm not going to go over every card that changed. I'm just going to try and hit highlights, because there are 15 new cards and then 165 other cards total that changed, or something like 175 other cards that changed. So that is not a small number. So let's start with the big one. So the big change that Fatigue allowed is that a lot of card draw got buffed. And specifically, a lot of generic card draw got buffed. So, let's see where to start. Brainstorm. Brainstorm is a great place to start. Brainstorm used to be gain overcharged 1 and then draw 2 for 2 mana. Now it's 3 mana, you draw 3, and then after you've drawn your cards, you get overcharged 1. This makes it much safer to use as the last card draw of your turn. It won't ever stack with itself, especially when upgraded. The problem you could hit with Brainstorm Plus previously was even if you didn't draw any other cards afterwards, it was pretty easy to end up shocking yourself by accident off of if you had to play it twice in the same fight. And this is now much less of a risk. Contemplate's now 1 mana cheaper. Overthink now is, I want to say it was draw 3, it's now draw 4. Brainstorm Plus is now draw 4 for 2 mana, which is absurd. Overthink is shuffling Dawson into your deck, draw 5. Trial by Fire is one of the new cards. You gain Burn 2 and Tough 2 and draw 3 for 4 mana. So getting Tough and to draw is easily worth taking a bit of pain. And this card helps turn on Caitan's Tempered Zeal, which was a kind of tricky card to activate on the last patch. And just getting one more good card that Caitan wants to play that goes with that is good. Aside from that, we got Introspection is now draw 2. Keen Contemplation is a new card that's kind of filling in for what Introspection used to be, which Introspection used to be 2 mana draw 2 non-mana. And now we have Keen Contemplation, which is 3 mana draw 2 skills, gain Adept 2, and that's filling a similar role. Runic Study used to be draw 2 if your last card played this turn was a spell. Now it's 3 mana draw 3. Upgraded, it's draw 5, which is ridiculous. Fire Tap is back to just drawing 2 instead of drawing 2 non-mana. Last Resort is now draw 4. So those are the main card draw. Oh, Ancestral Memory is now free. Treasures Generation. Treasure Hunt is now 1 mana cheaper. Demonic Read is now 1 mana cheaper. And the upgrade now makes 4 treasures. And then Secret Cache is now actually a very good card. Used to, it only had gain 2 mana, draw 1 treasure. It is now a kind of jank mana font. It draws 1 treasure, and then if you can't, you create and shuffle 1 treasure into your deck, which is kind of like drawing a card in a very roundabout sort of way. But when it upgrades, it still only gains you 2 mana, but it draws you 2 treasures. And if you can't, which I believe means that it will either draw you I'm trying to remember what happens if you have one treasure exactly in your deck, because it changed. But if you don't have any treasures, you'll create and shuffle 2 into your deck, which is very nice. I don't remember what happens. I don't remember if you just draw the 1 and then you don't shuffle in 2, or if you don't draw the 1 but you do shuffle in 2. So either way, Secret Cache, good card. Secret Cache Plus, also a pretty good card. Treasure deck overall got hit pretty hard by Fatigue prior to one of the initially we didn't get those. The treasure changes were pretty late in the beta, but with the changes to Demonic Greed and Secret Cache and Treasure Hunt, the treasure deck is now actually pretty good. I still don't like Blood Money, but you know, it is what it is. So yeah, card draw overall, card draw is better. The idea is that if you are running a small amount of card draw, it's now a lot more appealing, because that was the main goal of the changes, was that previously, because all card draw had to be costed to account for the fact that you could do very gross, dumb, infinite things with it, card draw had to be fairly weak individually because of how powerful it was when you brought all the pieces together. Thanks to Fatigue, the card draw is now stronger. On each piece of card draw is now stronger, but it's now weaker when combined due to needing to account for Fatigue, making all of your stuff more expensive, which means drawing a bunch of cards in one turn now has a very big downside. You can still build decks that do that, and you can still work around it. It's just harder. So another big change is a lot of shield cards got changed to be a little more expensive and provide a little more shield. So we have like Charged Shield just straight up now does 14 shield instead of 10. Spirit Helmet from 2 mana, 6 shield, 2 growth to 3 mana, 8 shield, 3 growth, and it also shields your allies. That's a neat bonus. Void Shield unfortunately got missed. Mind Shield got bumped from 3 mana 10 shield to 4 mana 13 shield. The overall rates are basically the same. It's just the cost and the benefit both went up. So block is now 3 mana for 10 instead of 2 for 6, because 3 for 10, like 10 is actually an amount of shield that could do something, which makes block a more interesting pick. I still don't like it, but it is what it is. And yeah, just across the board in general, shield cards got a little more expensive, but make a little more shield. So that's the shield changes in a nutshell. And I don't want to get into details because I haven't even played most of them. Poison changes. So poison got a good amount of love this patch. Some of the poison cards poison generation got buffed in some ways, but the biggest changes are the 3 payoffs. So poison spray used to be called poison spray, and it wasn't a payoff, and now it is withering spray, which is 6 mana, deal 1 damage to every enemy for each rank of poison it has. So it's basically like an extra activation of poison on all enemies that can be affected by buffs like Mighty or Vulnerable or whatever. It's obviously a little expensive, but it is a way for like a Rowden poison deck to convert a lot of poison that it has been able to throw out into a bunch of damage. The upgrade is just cheaper. It doesn't do more damage for rank of poison because that would be probably too strong. But yeah, that is your common payoff if you want one of those. You have Poisoned Touch got changed completely. Previously, it was trigger poison. It was like trigger poison and then give the target poison 6. Now, you trigger poison once and then you give it poison based on how much poison it has remaining. What this means is, let's say the enemy had 10 poison. You play Poison to Touch. They take 10 damage, leaving them and they're left with 5 poison. And then Poison to Touch's second part gives them 1 poison for every poison they have, putting them back up to 10. So, in effect, Poison to Touch says deal damage to an enemy equal to how much poison they have. They lose 1 poison if they had an odd amount of poison. That's basically what it says before upgrade. After upgrading, though, it triggers poison twice and then gives them 4 poison for every poison they have. So let's say that they had 16 poison. They take 16 damage, they go to 8 poison. They take 8 damage, they go to 4 poison. Now, they get 4 times 4 is 16. So they have 16 plus 4 for a total of 20 poison. So they took, from 16, they took 24 damage and then gained 4 poison, which you get for 2 mana, which is a pretty good deal. The downside is it now does nothing if your enemies aren't poisoned. And it doesn't do that much until they have a good amount of poison on them. So Poison to Touch is now really a powerful reward for building the poison deck. You don't want it if you aren't in the poison deck, but if you are in the poison deck, it can do quite a lot, especially if you have multiple, or you have like Spyglass or something, or Regrowth. It can do a lot. Catalyst, same deal. Previously, Catalyst was like add 6 or 10 poison, and then you triggered poison 2 or 3 times. Now you just double the poison on any enemy. That is very good. This means that how powerful Catalyst is directly connected to how much other poison, how consistently you can put out other poison generation. It also means that if you can loop Catalyst, if you can get Catalyst, if you can play Catalyst multiple times, you can quickly put out a lot of poison very quickly. Doing stuff like Spyglass and Duplatome on Catalyst and Poison to Touch can let you like spike up enough poison on a Hollow Maw to kill it in like 1 or 2 turns with the right hand. It's not the easiest thing in the world to pull off, but when you do, you feel awesome. And the poison deck overall now has the tools it needs to pull off those awesome runs that were previously the best you could hope for from poison was to die in your sleep, as Kenny Rogers says in The Gambler. No, the best thing you could hope for from poison was just like kind of disappointment. To be less disappointed was the best you could hope for. And now you can actually get those crazy runs where you do nonsense and you feel like you're cheating. Burn, similarly, got its payoffs changed. Stoke didn't get changed, but Fire Mastery and Firestorm did. Fire Mastery used to be you got powerful, temporary powerful, and mighty for every burning enemy, and then you did some amount of damage, which was kind of underwhelming because there's a very finite limit to how many enemies can be burning, and the burn deck doesn't have that many damaging cards anyway. So like it was niche useful on Caitan, and even there like it was just worth Vindictive Strike most of the time. But now you trigger burn on any enemy 5 times, and then if you do, you deal 30 damage to it, which makes this 55 damage, 25 of which can't be evaded, and 30 of which is affected by buffs against any given enemy that has at least 5 burn, which is not bad. I still don't love it, but I don't hate it. It's fine. Mostly you run Fire Mastery if you don't have Firestorm. And Firestorm is how the burn deck wins fights. Firestorm does damage to all enemies based on how on fire all enemies are. And then it sets them all on fire even more. So if you have, so let's say that you played Increasing Inferno Plus. So you're fighting 4 enemies, let's say. You play Increasing Inferno Plus, so now you have 12 burn across all enemies. And then you play Firestorm. That is 48 damage to all enemies, and they're still on fire. And now that is 40 damage to all enemies, and they now have burn 8. And that's assuming you don't have any buffs to your damage aside from that. And that's assuming Increasing Inferno was the only burn you were able to output first. It is very easy for Firestorm to stack up to pretty crazy numbers. Obviously, the burn deck is very mana hungry. I tend to play Route and Burn because of that, because the burn deck has a lot of cards that cost a lot of mana. But Increasing Inferno, now starting at 2, and then the upgrade being 3 and increasing by 2, that becomes a lot more appealing as an AoE burn source, especially with Firestorm as a payoff for AoE burn. Fire Tap is now good again, because it used to be, it had gotten swapped to non-mana, now it's back to just to being able to draw you mana, which is good. Oh, Frostfire got new art. I haven't seen that. Agonizing Blaze is one of the new cards. It gives 6 burn for 6 mana, which is a lot, but it means that you have, this card is bad unless you are planning to build a burn deck. If you are planning to get to Stoke the Fire and Firestorm and Fire Mastery, and you have Fire Taps, suddenly being able to apply 6 burn with 1 card is pretty nice to have. So that's burn. So let me think, what other cards changed? Kind of want to hit some of the highlights. Calculated Deception. Previously, you made these, it transformed one of your cards into a Deceiving Blast, and then you drew 1, which was pretty underwhelming because the Deceiving Blasts were just like 1 mana, deal 6, gain Wits 1, which was just like nothing. And so you're filling your deck up with these bricks. Now, Deceiving Blast is deal 10 damage and draws a card, which means that once they're in your deck, you could play through them as you draw them, and the calculated deception gives you a purity when you play it, which means that you get value out of that. And you can just do some fun stuff with calculated deception as your win condition in like dirtily decks, where you're just like slowly filling your deck with these ridiculous damage things. It's fun. It's not like overpowered, but it is a lot of fun. Essence Harvest is not a generic card. So there are a few cards that got changed. So the cards that trigger off of an enemy dying changed. So now, previously, you could just use them and potentially get the trigger multiple times in one fight. Now, if you manage to get the trigger, they transform into a different card. And so Essence Harvest, previously you got 3 max health, now you get 6, but you can only do it once per fight. And the upgrade was 5 and is now 10 max health, but you can only do it once per fight. And once you've done that, it transforms into this other card, this Essence Blast that deals damage and then heals. Absorb Soul, same deal. If it kills an enemy, you increase your recoverable health and heal 10, and then it transforms into the same Essence Blast that Essence Harvest does. Devouring Strike is still bad, and you won't use it, so it's irrelevant. Let's see, what other cards? Oh, some of the mana cards, like Arms Race, that used to upgrade into just gain 4 mana and then do the same thing. A lot of them now got bumped to only being plus 1 mana, but you get 1 more of the other thing. So Arms Race Plus now draws you 2 strikes, which is pretty good. And the big winner here is Mana Dance Plus, which doesn't get you any mana, but does give you Evasion 2, which is very good, especially if you can loop it with Regrowth. Or you have like Reclamation, or you have any other way to like play it multiple times. Mana Dance Plus can do very good work very quickly. Let's see what other cards got changed that I care about. Oh, there was a slight wording change that I forgot to mention. So you'll see like Dispel Magic now says Cleanse 1 instead of reduce the rank of all debuffs by 1 on yourself. It does the same thing, just has slightly cleaner wording. Get it? Cleanse, cleaner? Anyway, so yeah, Cleanse 1 yourself, Dispel 1 all enemies. Cleansing Jars now Cleanse 2 yourself, so that's worth noting. It used to be 1, it's now 2. And then we have Dispel, which is reducing enemy buffs, and then the other 2 are Empower, which now says Empower 1 yourself, which is Empower is increased rank of all buffs. And we have Corrupt, which is increase the rank of all debuffs on the target. So I can strike Corrupt twos the first enemy if the first enemy is vulnerable. We got, as far as new cards go, we got a couple common that apply Curse, which is nice. We got Cursed Bolt and Corrupted Roots. So if you wanted to build a Curse deck, you can now have that right out of the gate instead of relying on picking up a couple of very, very specific silver or gold cards. You can actually have Curse as your win condition in your deck right out of the gate. What other cards changed? I think that's most of the cards. Oh, there are a bunch of new Frostbite related cards among the new cards. So Rites of Winter got changed. I don't remember exactly what it was before. Oh, right, it just did less damage before. It now got bumped, so it's a bit more appealing because it was at 12, now it's at 16. And the upgrade is now at 24 instead of 18. So Rites of Winter is now actually a reasonable choice. Frostfire does a little bit more damage. That's mostly irrelevant. Frigid Ritual is one of the new cards. You gain 1 mana for every rank of Frostbite among all enemies. Frozen Gust gives Frostbite 3 to the first 2 enemies and deals 6 damage to them if they're frozen. So that's just another good way to apply a bunch of Frostbite. Glacial Stare, gain 2 mana, trigger Frostbite 1 on all enemies is just another common way to, so like if you're playing a Rowden Frostbite deck, you run like Glacial Stare and Chilling Focus. And so yeah, there's just, the Frostbite cards got changed slightly. I still don't think the Frostbite deck is crazy, but it's not awful. It's a neat little spice you can add to a Frost-focused deck. You probably do want to be on Rowden though, because let's see if I can get to, usually like 4 of these Frostbite related cards, including Biting Cold and Blizzard, which are 2 of your, and Frost Nova, so like 3 of your very good ways to get either use Frostbite on all enemies or put Frostbite on all enemies are all only usable for Rowden. If I finish now, I can keep it under an hour. I think Oh, we picked up a couple more purity sources. Revelation is a new way to do purity. It gives you wit 6 and purity 1. Calculated deception, like I said, now makes purity. Smite is no longer conditional on the purity. You just always get purity. So if you wanted a more expensive but damaging option to get purity, there you go. I think that is all of the notes that I have. There's a bunch of other cards that changed. There are so many cards that changed. I'm not going to go through. If there were fewer, I would consider going through all of the changes that happened to this patch. But with 190 cards changed, I don't think it's worth it. If this video ends up being helpful to people, if you would be interested in me breaking down all of the changes, all of the new cards, all of the cards that are different, let me know in the comments, and I'll book out a week to talk through that for you. If you have any questions if you have thoughts about a specific card you want to share, you want to know how I feel about, if you don't want to know like my thoughts on every single one of these changes, but you do want to know like how I feel about a specific card that I didn't talk about here, absolutely also let me know in the comments. Subscribe, follow all those YouTube things, etc. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you guys whenever next you tune into one of my, well, I won't see you. You won't see me either because I don't use a camera. But I will talk to you. I will talk at you next time. Toodles.